Right, so let me paint you a picture. You are old, properly old, and it is an ordinary Tuesday morning. Nothing dramatic, nobody is watching, there is no soundtrack. It is just you, a chair, and the fairly simple task of getting out of it. And the question on that Tuesday morning is whether your body cooperates. Not a marathon, not a photo shoot, not some heroic feat of athleticism, just a chair, and whether you can get out of it without holding something, without making a noise that belongs in a nature documentary, without sitting on the edge for a moment first and quietly negotiating. That is the test. That is the actual test. And here is the thing that got me, properly got me, when I finally sat with it long enough to feel uncomfortable. The body that either passes or fails that test is not being built in old age. It is being built right now, today, in the decisions that feel too small to matter and the habits that feel too harmless to worry about. Future you is already being built. I am John, by the way, father of 2 boys, neither of them old enough to worry about any of this yet, which is exactly why I am making it. Getting older is inevitable. I am not going to pretend otherwise. The years arrive whether you do anything sensible or not, which I personally find quite rude. But frailty, real, unnecessary, premature frailty, is not always inevitable. And that distinction is the one that most men, including me for longer than I care to admit, spend years quietly ignoring. I was not reckless. That is the part I find slightly embarrassing in hindsight. I was not eating terrible food every day or never moving at all. I was just comfortable, driving instead of walking because the car was there, taking the lift because the stairs were right there, but also so was the lift. Sitting for most of the day at a desk, then sitting on the sofa in the evening, then going to bed and doing it again. Nothing dramatic, just the slow, quiet, entirely reasonable feeling process of doing less and less with my body and telling myself it was fine because I was not in pain and I did not look obviously unwell. That was fine for a while, then it was not. Because the thing about gradual decline is that it does not announce itself. You do not wake up one morning and think, well, this is the day I officially became less capable. You just notice, sometime around your mid-40s, that getting off the floor has become a small engineering project. That you make a noise when you stand up from the sofa, not a conscious noise, just a noise. The noise of a man who has not been looking after himself as carefully as he thought he had been. My knees started making sounds I can only describe as architectural. Like something old that probably needs looking at, but you are hoping will sort itself out. Let me show you 2 men. Same age. Neither of them extreme. Neither of them a disaster or a hero. Man A is comfortable. He drives everywhere because it is easier. He sits at a desk all day. He means to sort it out, and has meant to for about 8 years. He gained a bit of weight, slowly enough that it crept in without making a fuss. He avoids movement that feels hard, because movement, he has quietly noticed, is starting to feel harder, which means he avoids it more, which means it gets harder. The cycle does not announce itself, it just continues. Man B is not obsessive. He walks most days. Nothing impressive, just walks. Sometimes just 10 or 15 minutes after dinner with his wife, or on his own, with his thoughts. He does a couple of strength sessions a week in his front room, with some resistance bands and a pair of dumbbells he bought second-hand. He uses the stairs at work. He plays 5-a-side, badly and regularly. He gardens. He carries his own shopping bags instead of leaving them by the boot and hoping someone else will bring them in. At 45, these 2 men look roughly similar. At 65, the gap is noticeable. At 75, the difference is not about abs or how they look in a photograph. The difference is independence. One man is old and still living. The other is old and mostly managing. The body keeps the receipts. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, because I have thought it myself. Standing in the garden with a beer, feeling fine, telling myself that I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Yes, you could. Most of us won't. Most of us will simply keep living in the body we slowly built, then act surprised when it behaves exactly like something we quietly ignored for 20 years. The bus is not coming. What is coming is Tuesday morning and the chair. What is coming is the stairs you start avoiding because your knees. What is coming is the floor you stop sitting on because getting back up has become the sort of thing that requires a plan. And then there is the other version of it, which is the granddad defense. You know the one. My granddad smoked 40 a day and lived to 92. Yes, and some people win the lottery. That is not a strategy. What we know, and this is not speculation, is that physical inactivity, poor diet, alcohol, smoking, these are among the major risk factors for the chronic diseases that quietly take quality of life away from men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Not every illness, not every outcome. Genetics exist, bad luck exists, and some people do everything right and still get dealt a terrible hand. I am not pretending that is not true. But for most men in ordinary circumstances, there is significantly more control over the long game than they are choosing to exercise. The NHS advises adults to aim for around 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, plus muscle strengthening activity on at least 2 days. That is not a lot. That is a walk and 2 sessions of something that makes your muscles work a bit harder than usual. That is the baseline, and most men are not at it. I was not at it. And here is where it gets personal, because this is not really about fitness, not in the way we usually talk about it. This is about a thing I find it very difficult to say out loud without feeling a bit pathetic, but I am going to say it anyway. I do not want to be a burden earlier than I have to be. I want to be able to carry my own shopping, climb my own stairs, get down to the floor with my grandchildren one day, and get back up without it being an event. I want to be the man who helps his family, not the one who always needs helping. I want to be able to say yes to life at 70, instead of negotiating with it. Capability is freedom. That is what this is about, not aesthetics, not performance, not how I look in a mirror or what my resting heart rate is, or whether I have visible muscles. This is about the entirely ordinary, completely unglamorous ability to move through daily life without needing assistance before you genuinely have to. Your body is not just something you live in. It is the thing that lets you live. And the good news, and I mean this, is that it is almost certainly not as complicated or as late or as far gone as you think it is. If you are overweight or stiff or weak or tired or embarrassed or so completely out of the habit that you cannot remember the last time you did anything that made you breathe hard, you can still improve. You may not be able to undo everything, but you can almost always improve something. And improving something is what starts the rest of it moving. You do not need a gym. You do not need equipment. Not to start. You do not need a plan so complicated it requires a spreadsheet and a subscription. Here is what you need. Walk after dinner. Even 10 minutes, particularly if you have not moved much during the day. Walk to somewhere and walk back. It counts. Sit to stands from a chair. Just standing up and sitting back down 10 times, deliberately, without using your hands to push off. Your legs will probably have some thoughts about this initially. That is the point. Press-ups against a kitchen counter while the kettle boils. Not full press-ups on the floor if that is not where you are yet. The counter. 15 of them while you are waiting for your tea. That is a strength session in an ordinary kitchen. Carry your shopping bags instead of putting them down. Pick them both up and walk to the car. Your grip and your shoulders will benefit more than you think. Use the stairs. Not every time, not as a religion, but when you reasonably could take them, take them. Sit on the floor once a day and get back up. That is it. That is the whole exercise. Get down and get back up. Because the day that becomes difficult is a day worth having pushed back. Resistance bands. A couple of light dumbbells, a kettlebell if you are feeling optimistic. Gardening counts, swimming counts, cycling counts, dancing counts. Walking football exists and is played by people who look like they are genuinely enjoying themselves, which is more than can be said for most people at an actual gym at 6 in the morning. If you have pain, injuries, or any health concerns, start sensibly and have a word with a doctor or a physio first. This is not a prescription. This is a direction. The first change is not your body. The first change is the moment you stop treating your body as someone else's problem. Because something genuinely shifts when a man starts doing this deliberately. I noticed it myself. Not immediately, not dramatically, but somewhere around the third or fourth week of walking regularly and doing something resembling strength work twice a week, I started feeling more capable. Not fitter in any impressive sense, just capable. Like I could carry things without calculating whether I could manage. Like I could take the stairs without quietly dreading them. I stopped making the noise. That felt significant. And then, which I was not expecting, I started looking forward to it. Not all of it. Some of it is still boring. But the feeling of moving through the day in a body that feels functional, that is a thing you genuinely miss when it has gone quiet for years. Momentum builds. Strength returns faster than you think it will, because muscle memory is a real thing and the body responds to being asked to do something. Aches that you assumed were just age occasionally turn out to be the aches of a man who has not been using his body properly, and they sometimes improve when you start using it again. Energy improves. Sleep improves. Self-respect improves. And I do not mean that in a motivational poster way. I mean it in the quiet, ordinary way of a man who is doing what he said he would do. Track it. Genuinely. Write it down. 2 strength sessions a week ticked off on a calendar. Daily steps on your phone. A note when you walk up the stairs without stopping. Set one actual goal. Get off the floor without using your hands. Carry both shopping bags from the car in one trip without a rest. Walk up a flight of stairs without your heart making a formal complaint. Do 10 controlled squats. Walk for 30 minutes without feeling like you need to lie down afterwards. 1 month from now, you will be surprised. Not transformed, but surprised. And surprised is where it starts. This is the bit I find hardest to say, because my boys are young, and I do not know who they will be or what they will want from their lives. But I know what I want for them. I do not care if they become gym people. I genuinely do not care whether they have impressive bodies or athletic achievements or any of that. What I care about is that they do not become men who have to negotiate with a staircase at 65. Who sit on the edge of a chair before attempting to get out of it, who cannot get down to the floor with their own children because the getting back up has become too uncertain. I want them to be capable. I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to say yes to life when they are old, instead of having to say, I would, but... Frail starts earlier than old. And if watching their dad actually do something about this, even imperfectly, even with creaking knees and a slightly absurd exercise situation in the front room involving a resistance band and an old pair of trainers that should probably be replaced, if that shows them something worth absorbing, then that is enough for me. Getting frail early is often helped along by choices made when they felt like they did not matter. That is the uncomfortable part. Not the illness or the injury or the bad luck. None of that is chosen, but the slow, comfortable drift toward doing less and less, the years of meaning to sort it, the small daily decisions that feel harmless in isolation and only make their full case known somewhere in your 60s. That part has more to do with us than we want to admit. It is almost always earlier than you think, and even when it feels late, it is usually not pointless. One day, future you will need the body you are building right now. Not for anything heroic, not for a photograph, for the stairs, the chair, the shopping bags, the floor. For being able to sit with someone you love and get back up again, without it becoming the thing everyone quietly notices. Getting old is coming for all of us. That is fine. That is just Tuesday. But if I can help it, I would rather arrive there still able to carry my own bags, climb my own stairs, get up from my own chair without commentary, and be useful to the people I love. Not impressive, not heroic, just capable. And honestly, from where I am standing, that sounds like freedom.